How can you connect millionaires, strangers, landlords, lovers, your own blood cells betray? What binds the fabric together when the raging, shifting winds of change you ripping away? Go on and send them, make the stand. Use your camera to score. Use your guitar when they...
Hi, I'm Amelia Bienstock, and I'm the winner of the Make Your Mark contest. Yay!
Hey y'all, I'm MJ Rodriguez. I play the part of Angel Dumas.
Hey guys, I'm Margot Bingham. I play Lexi Darling in Mimi and Joanne Understudy.
Hi, I'm Emma Hunton, and I play Maureen.
What is your advice that you would give to young actors and actresses who are trying to make it in New York? I know you're like, what, 20? 21.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, so you guys are all so young and already have this. Like, what would you, what would your advice be?
Well, I would always say to keep auditioning. You know, always look for something new. Always keep your head up. You know, there are always going to be a lot of rejections there, but there's always going to be a door that's going to be open. So make sure that option is open, and also just sky's the limit. You know, anything is possible. So just make sure you keep focused. That's the main thing. Keep focused.
I think it's important to continue to work on your craft also. You know, it's so easy to get caught up in the work once, we're so blessed to have a job, but it's easy to forget once you have a job that the time of working needs to stop, because you made it, quote unquote, but everyone's show eventually ends, as ours does soon, so I think it's important to know as a creative mind that the creativity never really ends and your teaching and learning never ends, and to continue on that road, because perfecting yourself you'll never get to the top of perfection. It's only as high as you continue to build it. So
if you guys could go back in time and ask Jonathan Larson one question, what would it be?
Ooh,
and
good question.
Tough. Well, I don't think I know the answer to that, actually.
Emma, you want to start that?
Is this okay?
I think a lot of my questions would be,
is this okay?
It's a thing in the Rent family to have a Life Cafe dinner every year once the show begins. And Michael Greig this year hosted it over his apartment, so that was kind of cool. But Mr. Larson, Jonathan's father, came, and some of Jonathan's friends and his old roommate, and we watched these old videos of him singing in these little bars like Joe's Pub or Bitter End around New York City, like kind of the go-to bars that make or break artists, from the beginning to now. But it's just, it was so interesting to see that, because as a kid, Rent was something that I used to do book reports on, and want to be in so badly, and that was the first musical I ever saw. That was the first musical disc I ever bought, and it's just so weird to then see Jonathan Larson's videos in front of my eyes. And it also just blows my mind, all of the different tiny things that he thought of, the conversations and the little peaks and points that he needed to make apparent enough in that particular song, and he needed everyone to hear it at the same time. I just want to know what was going on through his head, and you were able to do that. It's just insane to me. It blows my mind every night, and it's also really hard to hear it and listen to it every night. But it's kind of cool to know someone can be that musically autistic enough to stop 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 different tracks within their own head. That blows my mind. As far as what to ask him, I have no idea. I would probably pull that celebrity and freeze a little bit, because he's so much of my life that I wouldn't be able to stop asking him any questions, and more importantly, I would just kind of want to be around him.
I know he said this show was, from Michael Greig and Jeffrey Seller, they told all of us that this was about a lot of the people we knew. And the question that I would have liked to ask him if he were still on this earth is, how did you manage to write a play about all the people you knew and still keep it together without breaking down and stopping and be like, I can't do this. This hits too hard. Because a lot of those people in the play that he knew passed on from the epidemic of AIDS. And it just that was in my mind. I'm like, how did you write that? How did you manage to keep it going? Was it drive? Was it faith? Was it you wanting to get a message? Which probably that was the number one thing was the message getting across. What was it? Because that takes a strong person to write a heavy play and keep it together and for it to become such a big success.
You know, speaking of the characters and their relationship to, you know, his friends, which Rent character do you feel like you relate to the most?
That's a good question.
That's a really good question.
I would have to, and I'm not cocky at all.
Oh God, here we go.
I'm just saying, like, Angel being a character of love and of peace and of togetherness. I really do tie myself to my character. And I said that from the very beginning, because that is what I am all about.
I would have to say Mark. I love that his number one goal and journey through the show is to love and care for his friends, and that's it. And I'm so big on friends and family in my life that that's probably one of the most important things for me ever. But the way that he just kind of views the whole world that he's built and lived in and created, he lives in it enough that he doesn't get completely completely lost in it, but he also is able to pull himself back enough, and he has that filter in between, which his vice is his camera. So, you know, I think that we all kind of have our own little filter that we all kind of can step back a little bit from our friendships or family enough to just kind of peek in every once in a while when we need to, and he does that so well. And sometimes he loses it, and sometimes he loses control, and I know that sometimes I do too, and it's easy to get caught up in other people's problems, but it's nice to know to also be able to pull yourself back. But he's smart and witty,
And so am I.
And
So am I, and that's the reason why I picked up.
no, I just think he's really nerdy, and I'm kind of nerdy, so I actually that's why I picked him.
That's the big one.
That's the big one.
I am a perfect mix, I think, of Maureen and I think it was like the first time MJ and I had gone out to dinner and I said something, we were walking out of the theater, he's like, damn Emma, you really are Maureen.
Yes, I did. We were walking right in front of the backstage on 49th Street, walking down the street towards the Wayne. I will never forget that day.
We'll never forget it. We were like live jungle for dinner or something. But because I do have a crazy, I mean, we've all heard and seen me do and say some crazy things. But I also think there's a huge part of me that shares the same sentimentality and introspect as Mark. I think Mark enjoys being a little bit of a background character in the indie film of his life, which I similarly enjoy as well.
I guess, you know, with the show coming from Broadway and having this huge fan base, and so many people who can sing the entire show by heart and have this exact idea of what it should be like. Did you feel any kind of pressure, you know, coming into that, and has that affect your performance at all? And also, you know, replacing Emily, like, you know, making the character your own?
Absolutely. I remember I came to see the show right after I found out that I had booked it. And I came with a good friend of mine, and we came to see our friend Matt Shingledecker, who was playing Roger at the time. And I ran into Michael Greif, and he came up to me. He's like, I'd like to speak to you for a minute outside, please. And I was like, okay. And we came out to the lobby out here, and he was like, when you watch Anna Lee, he's like, please don't try and do what she's doing. He's like, I don't want you to do what she's doing. And it was coming from a place of, because she's so funny that you are not going to be able to pull this off. You have to, I had to sort of go in my own direction with it. He is so brilliant. He's so smart, but not only that, but he's really great with letting you figure out your own thing while still simultaneously leading you down the path that he wants you to go to. He knows how to get what he wants out of you while you feeling like you really, really, you know, were a part of the creation of it, which I think he knew was important for me to feel involved, especially with a show like this. You have to feel like you created it with everybody, even if you are a replacement, because that bond translates on stage, and it has to be there or the show doesn't work. You've got 9 people doing 9 different shows, 9 different versions of their own show on stage, which is no one wants to watch. It's awful.
what I truly worry about is not letting them down. And not seeing those faces who sing every single word literally stop. That's the one thing that I don't ever want to stop. Yes, they may do it, we may hear them, and yeah, they may throw us off a little bit, but it's always good to see those people do that, because once they lose it, that means you've lost it on stage, and you never want that. So I was worried about letting people down, and definitely those big shoes to fill. Wilson J. Heredia was the original Angel, and those shoes that I'm trying to fill, he tore them up, jumped off, did all this other stuff, but it was...
He bedazzled them.
He bedazzled them. He did what he did. So they were definitely big shoes to fill.
Yeah, I mean, coming from the Broadway cast, it freaked me out a little bit that Alexi Darling was that, the two braided and puffy
pink bra.
bra track, and I was like, oh no. When I saw pictures like that, I was like, oh, geez, no, that can't happen. So that was cool to see costume changes.
What is the weirdest thing, or I don't know, craziest thing a Rent fan has ever said to you? Because I know something very intense.
They are kind of what make our career happen and what make us relevant in the first place, because without them, we wouldn't really be like someone to give two questions about, So I always feel it really important to go and talk to our fans, because without them, we don't have a name. I do love the fans that come up and like give me hugs and stuff, and that are crying afterwards, and because you really move them and touch them, and that makes my world if I can make their night, So that's cool.
People have been very, very kind to me. But I have had people say, this happened to Natalie the other day too. It's like, oh, you're not as big as you look on stage.
That's happened.
Or
or you're more attractive in real life.